I want to tell you about one particular story that really, I guess, inspired a lot of what we're doing, and probably one of the reasons we're here today. As I was saying, I was in Lebanon. I was meeting a lot of Syria's most vulnerable refugees. Some of those stories people will know about, like Aya, a woman called Khawla, and I've shared those stories many times. But there's one story I haven't really told, and it's about a young girl called Khawla. And the reason I've never told her story is because at the time it didn't seem the right thing to do. It didn't seem appropriate because she was 12 years old, actually 11 years old when I met her. And she had just come out of hospital. And the reason she just come out of hospital is she had tried to commit suicide. She had just arrived from Syria. She had seen most of her classmates killed when a bomb hit her school, and she was one of the few survivors. Her father was then arrested by the regime and disappeared and has never been heard of since. So with her mother, they escaped into Lebanon to it's not even a refugee camp, it was a bit of wasteland near Tripoli in the north, and they were living in a tent made of bits of plastic and cardboard. They'd made it themselves. Now, if you imagine this family in such desperate need, Khawla was the oldest of 11. She has a brother that lives with a disability, so her mother was having to do full-time care. They were in a desperate situation. And Khawla, who was obviously suffering from PTSD over what had happened, heard her mother say that she was struggling to feed everyone. So she thought, if I take rat poison, it will be one less mouth for my mother to feed. So that's what she did. She took rat poison. She was taken to intensive care, spent 2 weeks in hospital, barely survived. But I met her literally the day after she came out of hospital. She was so timid and quiet, she didn't speak. She was shocking to see her, really, this traumatized girl, and getting no therapy, let's say living in this makeshift tent. And she actually asked me to take her photograph. She said, would you take a photograph and document my story? And I did, but I refused to publish it because I felt she was too vulnerable and too much of too young to actually understand what was going on. But I'm going to show you that photograph that I took of her, 6 years ago now. And this is her on that time when I first met her. So there we go. Now, if you imagine this girl, this was the only clothes she had. This was the bit of wasteland that they lived on. This was her whole life. I walked away from that thinking I could never walk away from a story like this again, that it was not enough just to be a photographer. And in fact, in this case, I didn't even want to publish this photograph and her story. So we didn't even talk about her when we did the first crowdfunding campaign. We talked about Khawla, Aya, and these other families. But what we were able to do is get Khawla into a flat with her family, and we were able to get her back in school. And for the last 5-6 years, that's what we have been doing. She's one of many, many families, but she's one, I have to say, that particularly affected me. I felt something that I kind of wanted to protect her, this young girl that had gone through that trauma. And I went to visit her on this trip to Lebanon. And I want to show you a photograph of her. We went out, it was her 17th birthday. And I said, what would you like to do? And like many teenagers, she just wanted to go out and have a pizza. So we went out in Tripoli, and this is a photograph of her now.
Oh.
And she's training, she wants to be a doctor. She's managed to catch up in school. She's learning English so she can talk to me. She is one of the smartest, brightest people I know, full of love and laughter. We were actually making a film at the time. She was chatting to all the film crew, really outgoing. And you realize sometimes it's actually quite simple. People talk to me about issues such as refugee crisis in Lebanon or in other parts of the world. And they talk about it in the sense of what can we do? How can we help? As if it's a complex problem. And actually what I've realized is, time and time again, it's actually incredibly simple. For somebody like Khawla and all the other families that we support around the world, she needed two things. She needed security and she needed education. And we have been providing that to her for the last 6 years. But if we're not able to carry on the funding, then unfortunately these programs and the lives of Khawla and many, many other families will change and go back to the position they were in.